Almost 5,000 people have been killed in Israel and Palestine in what is being seen as one of the deadliest escalations of the conflict between Israel and the Palestinian terror group Hamas, which is in control of the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to destroy the group and turn them to dust. For over a century, Israel has been a hotbed of conflicts, and the latest attacks have a long history of wars rooted in complex historical, political, religious, and territorial disputes between Israelis and Arab forces in and out of Palestine. Over 100 years ago, when Britain gained control of the Palestine region after defeating the Ottoman Empire, it was a situation of an Arab majority and a Jewish minority. A demand rose from the international community to give the Jewish people a national home on the land they said was their ancestral home. But Palestinian Arabs also claimed the land and opposed such a move. What happened next shaped the history of the Middle East. Over the years that followed, the number of Jews fleeing to the Middle Eastern region increased as they escaped persecution in Europe during the Holocaust. The tussle between the two sides kept growing till 1947, when the British, unable to solve it, left the decision to the United Nations. The next year, the Jewish leaders declared the formation of Israel, shortly after the Arab countries declared war. Here's a timeline of wars in Israel. This was the first ever war that occurred in the region immediately after the formation of independent Israel. Hundreds of Palestinians were forced out of their homes and described it as al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. Neighboring Arab states, including Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, also faced the brunt of the war that went on for more than a year. Between February and July 1949, Israel and its neighboring Arab states reached a temporary agreement and fixed a frontier. It came to be known as the War of Independence in Israel. Tensions mounted again in 1956 with the rise of Egypt's President Gamal Abdel Nasser, a staunch Arab nationalist who had a hostile stance towards Israel. Also known as the Suez War, this conflict primarily involved Israel, the United Kingdom, and France, who struck a deal against Egypt. Israel wanted to gain control of the Sinai Peninsula and end Palestinian Fedayeen attacks from Egyptian territory. In a span of 5 days, the Israeli army invaded the Sinai Peninsula and captured Gaza, Rafah, and Al-Arish. However, the conflict ended 2 months later due to international pressure and the intervention of the UN, and Israel withdrew from Sinai. In 1967, Israel fought a brief but decisive war with Egypt, Jordan, and Syria, known as the Six-Day War. This war was mainly dominated by Syria, which intensified its bombardment of Israeli villages in the Golan Heights. Israel's counterattacks shot down Syrian fighter jets and also destroyed Egypt's air force, which had launched an assault on Nasser's orders. The war ended with Israel's victory, and it captured the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, and the West Bank, and drove back Syrian forces from the Golan Heights. Also known as the October War or Ramadan War, this conflict began sporadically and developed into a full-blown war when Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel during the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur. Israel initially faced difficulties with the aggressive Arab forces, but eventually repelled them and pushed its way into Egyptian and Syrian territory by crossing the Suez Canal and establishing forces in the West Bank. The war lasted for the entire duration of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. It ended with Israel and Egypt signing a formal ceasefire agreement. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon in response to Palestinian attacks and to remove the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, from Lebanese territory. This was less than 6 weeks after Israel's complete withdrawal from Sinai. The increased tensions between Israel and Palestinians resulted in the bombing of Beirut and southern Lebanon, where PLO had a stronghold. Israel invaded and gained control of Lebanon, with the PLO still resisting. The war went on for 3 years, till Israeli troops completely withdrew from Lebanon in 1985. In July 2006, Hezbollah, with its extensive rocket arsenal, launched an operation into northern Israel, killing many Israeli soldiers and causing civilian casualties and damage. Hezbollah wanted to pressure the country into releasing Lebanese prisoners. But Israel launched a counteroffensive that left over 1,000 Lebanese dead and nearly 1 million displaced. While the Second Lebanon War did not directly involve the Palestinian territories, it was influenced by regional dynamics and conflicts. The war ended with a United Nations brokered ceasefire. Since the political control of Hamas over the Gaza Strip, there have been 4 notable conflicts in Gaza in 2008 to 2009, 2012, 2014, and 2021. This conflict started in December 2008, after Israel launched a military operation in the Gaza Strip in response to rocket launches by Palestinian militants. The war lasted 3 weeks, with significant casualties on both sides. On November 14, 2012, Israel launched an air military operation, Pillar of Defense, against the terrorist organization Hamas and the Islamic Jihad leadership in Gaza. The operation lasted 8 days. Again, on July 8, 2014, Israel launched Operation Protective Edge, which also came to be known as the 2014 Gaza War. The 50-day conflict was one of the deadliest escalations between Israel and Hamas in recent times. The conflict resulted in significant civilian casualties and infrastructure damage in Gaza. The ceasefire was brokered by Egypt and the UN. The conflict of May 2021 started with tensions in East Jerusalem after Israel claimed to protect itself from Palestinian violence. There were clashes at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Israeli threats to evict Palestinian families from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood added fuel to the fire. The fighting went on for 11 days, killing at least 250 people in Gaza and 13 in Israel. The Israel-Palestine conflict remains a deeply sensitive and unresolved issue, with the status of Jerusalem at its core. There have been countless efforts to find a peaceful resolution, but so far the situation has remained temperamental.